the Cowboys and those contracts. Bill, what do we need to know? Let's begin with Dak.
Yeah, quarterback Dak Prescott going into the final year of his contract. Now, some thought an extension might be in place by now, or at least a restructure. But the Cowboys only converted the small roster bonus of Dak's back in March for additional cap space. This team is staring down the possibility of Dak playing out the final year of his contract. And oh, by the way, he's already being tagged twice. Why does that matter? It means the third tag in March would be prohibitively expensive to the point that it might not even be palatable for Dallas. Meanwhile, wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, who was the best wideout in football for the second half of last season, is sitting there staring at all these deals getting done and saying to himself, what about me? He skipped out on mandatory minicamp, which of course incurred a fine, but that was not the part that bothered CeeDee Lamb. He wants a deal that maybe mirrors that which Justin Jefferson just signed, 4 years, $140 million, at least in that vicinity. Micah Parsons, perhaps the best edge rusher in the NFL, also looking for a new deal. Maybe one of the problems here is we did not see a record-setting deal signed this offseason at that edge spot. Nick Bosa got that right before training camp last year from the 49ers at $34 million per season. You can certainly imagine that Micah Parsons, if he gets a new deal, is seeking one that's very close, if not above, what Nick Bosa signed with San Francisco.
I realize emotions get involved here, right? And they should, okay, but in fandom too. But Bill, would it be a wise decision in general, business-wise, to invest all the capital that would be needed to be invested to keep these three guys in Dak, CeeDee, and Micah?
It would be expensive. It would be curious. You can do it. Other teams have done it, but it has not worked out well for them. So for the Cowboys to re-sign all these guys, after you adjust for next year's cap figure when they probably will have all three of these guys signed, you'll get more than 10% of the cap for each of these players, nearly half of the cap for just three guys on your roster. Wow. Cowboys are a very top-heavy team, but only two teams, in recent history at least, have had more than 10% of their cap assigned to three different players. In 2022, both the Raiders and the Rams did it. Wow. Star players, Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp. No issue with those deals, but those teams both had losing records, so it's tough to maybe surround those stars with enough to go on a big winning stretch.
Yeah, look at the combined record. They're 11-53, and both Kmart missed the playoffs.
Yeah, not great.
The Cowboys should be doing that, right?
So here's the thing. When talking about the Cowboys, I feel like this is the never-ending question. I have been asking people around the league, what are the Cowboys doing? And the question I've heard for months is, can the Cowboys even afford all three guys to begin with? And the fact that there's been no movement, especially on Dak, when we knew this was coming, that's been surprising. And what have we seen? We've seen Trevor Lawrence get paid. We've seen Justin Jefferson get paid. So the price tag keeps going up as we see inaction from the Cowboys. So I don't know when this will get done, how many contracts. I don't see how they can sign all three guys.
Well, I'll just say this about Dak Prescott. Everybody, and I was on this set a couple of weeks ago, Laura, I think talking with you, saying like, you know, the Cowboys, like, just get this done now, wrap it up, because every quarterback contract that comes in is only going to push the value of Dak's contract up. And you know, candidly, I got some response from people that I think are probably even closer to this situation than I am that said, hey, you got to remember something. Dak's resolute. This is a tough-minded guy who a couple of years ago, when everybody was saying, Dak, take the money, Jared Goff got it. This is back during his first extension with the Rams. 4 years, $134 million. Carson Wentz got 4 years, $128 million for Philly. Dak said, I'm going to play out the string here. The net result was in the 5 years after the season everybody wanted Dak to extend, made $191.4 million bucks. So his patience, which, by the way, that takes mental toughness, because it's very easy to just take a generational money contract when it is presented to you. Is a factor here. Dak has all the leverage, and he's willing to play it.
That's why I'm a little nervous for the Cowboys, because if I'm his rep, I'm telling him, just hang tight.
And he's had no problem doing that. It's a great point. The other thing, too, you got to think about some of these teams that could need quarterbacks. They could be willing to pay a whole lot more and maybe more equipped to do that because they don't have their money tied up in other things. Brandon Aiyuk doesn't have a deal yet with the 49ers, and the Niners have said they want to hold on to him, but money talks. And this video right here may reveal Aiyuk doesn't think the money is talking just yet. Watch this FaceTime.
50 count.
He got me vlogging this.
Bro, what?
What happened, bro?
They said they don't want me back. I swear.
Okay, Okay, so for context, Brandon Aiyuk and Jaden Daniels, who he was FaceTiming there, were teammates at Arizona State. But anyway, Field, you heard him saying there that they don't want him back. Where are the negotiations with the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk right now?
Let's start here, Laura. You and I were on the set yesterday when Adam Schefter made very clear. The 49ers want Brandon Aiyuk to be around. Do not make any mistake about that. But, of course, no deal is done as of yet. Aiyuk going into the 5th year of his rookie contract, scheduled to make just over $14 million this season. As we know, that is like below average wide receiver money now in the climate of the NFL that we are in. So the end goal is, of course, an extension for both sides. The tricky part is, where do you place a player like Brandon Aiyuk right now? Justin Jefferson is ahead of him. $35 million per year is not likely to be on the table for Brandon Aiyuk. He's probably saying, though, I want more than Devontae Smith at $25 million. Maybe around Jalen Waddle at $28 million. Maybe a bit more. But San Francisco also knows this. Every player that they sign to a long-term deal is one less dollar for somebody else. You talked about the Cowboys being top-heavy, Bill. The 49ers have 7 separate players making $15 million or more per season. And, oh, by the way, Brock Purdy is scheduled to make probably around $60 million starting next season. So if you take a look at this list of these highest average annual value contracts for the 49ers, I'm sure they want to keep Brandon Aiyuk. But this is, and I said it yesterday, this is a jigsaw puzzle for John Lynch and the 49ers front office, is that you want to keep as many great players as you can, but there are some difficult decisions that have to be made when you have these champagne problems.
I mean, definitely, it's expensive champagne. So along those lines, do you think the 49ers, Bill, can afford to pay Aiyuk in addition to Debo and Brock Purdy and anybody else that may come up down the road?
All the contracts they have coming. You know, on one hand, it's tough, but then I look around the league, and there is a team that has managed to do it, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles, where they're spending $213 million in cash on their offense this year, the most for any team in the history of the National Football League. But think about all the players they have afforded to pay on the offensive side of the roster. Jalen Hurts making a market value deal. Saquon Barkley, 2-star receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert, Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson. They're sort of playing the, hey, you can have your cake and eat it too scenario on offense. So I think you have to draft really well, and that could be an issue because the Niners don't have those 3 first-round picks from the Trey Lance trade on their roster. But I do believe if they're really committed to keeping this offense together, might have to sacrifice other places, but you can make it work.
Well, and Kimberly, there's a Super Bowl window here, too, that's a reality for these types of teams, like the 49ers, certainly, who have been knocking on that door and run into the Chiefs, and the Eagles, who are trying to get back to that level. It feels like you kind of might want to go all in and see if you can actually win it. Yes, but as Field and Bill were just pointing out, look at all the guys that they have. Everybody wants top dollar. And with Aiyuk, listen, it's the off season. This is where players feel like, show me what I'm really worth to you time. And every player starts doing, they chatter a little bit on Twitter, the video. But talking to GMs and execs, they watch that video and express skepticism to me as far as Brandon Aiyuk's even availability or the fact that he would even be dealt or the likelihood that he could somehow get to the Commanders. They understand this is him trying to get top dollar. And really, the 49ers, they need to pay a lot of guys. This is their window, yes, but you can't sacrifice right now for the future. Like, you can't sacrifice the future for right now. And every guy wants that top dollar, and they just don't. They're not budging right now.
Yeah, the last complicating factor, I think, for San Francisco is you got to know and feel the locker room. And just a few years ago, Deebo Samuel was considered by some the most versatile and perhaps explosive offensive weapon in the NFL. He got paid recently. If Deebo Samuel's making $24 million per year, and next thing you know, Brandon Aiyuk is making $28, $29, $30 million per year, what do you think Deebo's going to do? He's going to get on his phone and say, John, how about me, right? Aiyuk was a better and healthier player last season, but it's not merely this one-season snapshot. Deebo's been a difference-making player, so a lot of dynamics in play here for San Francisco. Again, these are good problems to have when you are this dominant of a franchise, but everybody thinks this is easy when you just continue to make NFC championship games.
Speed matters, too, with that team. And I do think it's important to think about Aiyuk as a deep threat. And, in fact, he had 27 catches on throws at least 15 yards last year. That's tied for 4th in the league. He does a lot in that offense, not to be ignored. Let's go to Cleveland, where Deshaun Watson's rehab continues. His health and ability, the most important question the Browns need to answer, of course, but Amari Cooper's contract, the running back position without Nick Chubb for a while. There are a couple other topics to keep an eye on. Here's more on Watson's recovery, specifically from GM Andrew Berry.
He's really actually ahead of schedule. He's really chomping at the bit to take the governor off, so to speak. But really, he's had a really nice spring. He's thrown the ball well. We're excited as he gets into training camp and we get the pads on. But he's making excellent progress. And honestly, if you didn't know he got hurt last year, you really wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So we're very excited once camp starts.
So, Phil, that sounds promising.
Yeah.
Will we ever see the best version of Deshaun Watson again?
All I'm willing to say, Laura, is it's this year or never. Right? Because at this point, you're 3 years removed from Deshaun Watson being at what might be the peak of his powers, right? Arguably the second quarterback you'd build your franchise around behind Patrick Mahomes when he was traded away from Houston to Cleveland. He had the 11-game suspension during his first season. Comes back in December, cannot find a rhythm, plays in terrible weather games. Last year, battling through injury. The final half that he played last year, before he was out for the rest of the season, though, was the best half we've seen of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Small sample size leader to the max here. But they overcame a 14-point deficit against the best defense in the NFL, the Ravens. If he can build off of that, the Browns can be excellent. But I can't tell you any more than that with certainty right now.
Yeah, and what's really difficult about this is that the Browns' offense was pretty good under Joe Flacco last year. And not just because of Joe Flacco, but with 2 backup tackles, no Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson didn't have as well, and without Amari Cooper for a stretch against teams like the Jets, they were incredible down the stretch. And that's my concern is this offense is really a play action heavy. They want to boot, they want to get their quarterback on the edge. And Joe Flacco was much better at that than Deshaun Watson was last season. So I wonder, we talked about maybe the schematic fit when Deshaun Watson got there. It feels like they still haven't really resolved that. And when left to their own devices, it felt like they got better with a guy in Joe Flacco who was on his couch for most of the year last year.
Yeah, that part's crazy.
Literally on his couch.
Yeah.
Kimberly, what are you hearing about the 2 key pieces in this offense? We're referencing Amari Cooper, possible extension there, and then Nick Chubb's help.
So when you think about Amari Cooper, love Amari Cooper. I hated that the Dallas Cowboys gave him away for a bag of chips, but he's also going to be 30 very soon. And if you're expecting him to get a big money wide receiver deal like CeeDee Lamb, that's not going to happen. Andrew Berry talked about how smart he is. He's a shrewd businessman as well. They understand that you have a lot of pieces, a lot of guys want to get paid, and you're trying to keep it all together. Their offense clearly needs him, but as far as Amari Cooper goes, he's been so productive. He's got to be back in the fold. And Nick Chubb, he's not putting a timeline on when he'll be fully healthy, but the good news is that he's going through his rehab. He's running straight line, but he's got to be running full speed. And so right now, they'll probably know a little bit more in the next month or so, but it's still too soon to know because of that devastating injury he suffered.
The good news is, whenever he returns, Laura, Kimberly Martin will be right there on the sidelines because she only covers
all of it.
She spends all her time with those Browns.
And somehow it's always 12 degrees.
Every time she posts, she's like, well,
pointing out.
I'm going back to Cleveland. Okay, the ring ceremony was last week. The Chiefs and staff got their rings. Those hands are looking pretty full, but of course you always make room for another Super Bowl ring. Here's Adam Schefter on some of the questions Kansas City has to answer to three-peat.
Ever since Kansas City traded standout wide receiver Tyreek Hill, it hasn't much mattered who's played wide receiver. Not with the Chiefs quarterback.
We got to show everybody who we really are.
But as the Chiefs attempt to become the first team ever to win 3 straight Super Bowls, they're going to need more stability and productivity from their receivers to do it. Last season, Chiefs wide receivers combined for 25 drops, 7 more than any other NFL team. Then Rashee Rice, who led Kansas City last season with 7 touchdown catches, spent the offseason going rogue and finding trouble. Rice faces multiple charges after leaving the scene of a car crash on a Dallas highway that left 7 people injured, leading to questions about his potential availability this upcoming season. As the Chiefs set out to reel in history, free agent wide receiver Marquise Brown and first-round pick Xavier Worthy will have to step in to complement the top tight end of this era, Travis Kelce.
Wide open in the end zone. Touchdown, Kansas City. Back to back, baby.
Patrick Mahomes already is coming off a season in which he had career lows in passing yards per game and total QBR. Not that it has much mattered.
Anybody can be frustrated when they lose. It's just about how you respond.
Over the past 2 years, largely due to the efforts of Mahomes and Kelce, the Vince Lombardi Trophy has taken up residency in Kansas City. But to stay there The wide receivers will have to do their part.
Kimberly, what do you think is the biggest barrier to a Chiefs three-peat?
I think 3 things, guys. So number 1, history. It's so hard to just win a Super Bowl, period. To win 2, ridiculous. 3, crazy, right? That's
Never
number
happened
1.
before.
That's number 1. Then you have, Travis Kelce, his age. We talked a lot about that last year. Kelce said, I'm good, I'm playing, I still feel great. But they are getting older. He's getting older. So what is he going to be? And then also, I liken it to I remember I went to one of my first concerts was like Madonna's reinvention tour. I'm really dating myself. But the Chiefs had
way to start, though.
I know. It probably only went downhill from there, right? I mean, I don't know what other concerts.
choir for my first concert. I thought it was awesome.
But think about it. Last year, you had Patrick Mahomes losing his mind on the sideline. Travis Kelce getting so frustrated because they were like, this is not us. And they had to reinvent themselves. Schefter talked about in the piece, career lows for Patrick Mahomes in a lot of categories. This year, this roster has to figure out how do we reinvent ourselves to be a new version of ourselves so that we can do exactly what we've been doing, which is to win another Super Bowl.
Yeah, one of the things that Andy Reid's even talked about, even at minicamp, is like, hey, this is the time to do all these different things offensively, be creative, and have it fail so we figure out what we can workshop. You mentioned Travis Kelce, and he is 35. How's he going to hold up going into the season? He actually addressed how he'll know when it's time to step away. He did that with his brother Jason on their New Heights podcast earlier today.
When it gets harder to continue doing it, and you're fighting your body more and more to continue doing it.
I was fighting my body the first year I got in the league.
Yeah.
Fighting my body is just a part of the gig, man. That's not what's going to chase me out of the National Football League.
Part of it.
I think you were very fortunate that you were able to go out on your terms, and that's the goal. That's the goal. If I can go out on my terms and
Pretty good terms already,
right? Yeah, he's doing all right. I mean, listen, that's what every player seems to want, right? But as you look at this Chiefs offense, Bill, will they take a step back, or do you see them taking a step forward this year?
I think they will take a step forward because they really can't get worse at wide receiver than they were last year, right? I mean, this is a team whose wide receivers dropped nearly 8% of their passes, the highest rate for any team's wide receivers in any season over the last decade.
Goodness.
And they were much better in the postseason. Only dropped 3% of the passes at wide receiver. They won a Super Bowl. Travis Kelce's usage rate has gone down. He's played 95% of the snaps in 2018, down to 77% this past season. So less Kelce, but Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy. Maybe they get more out of the guys they had. I think they're going to be better on offense than they were last year, which is kind of scary, right?
Yeah, Xavier Worthy, he set the NFL Combine record with that 4.21 second 40-yard dash. Unbelievable. 26 touchdown catches, the third most in Texas school history.